right, welcome to Checkpoint. The hashtag on social media is Checkpoint, on Facebook at Yvonne Okwara, on Twitter at Yvonne Okwara, at KTN News, or on SMS. The number is 22155. On this date in 2008, that peace accord was signed. How far have we come? What are some of those key tenets of Agenda 4? And, how far have we come with that regard? The constitutional bodies, the Constitution itself. Let me introduce you to my panel today. We have Daisy Amdany, who's the chair of the National Women's Steering Committee. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have Peter Kariuki, who's an advisor on governance in the Office of the President. And then we have Dr. Ekuru Aukot, whom you all remember was the birther of this constitution, if you like, was the chair of the committee of experts that drew up the constitution. He's now the team leader of Third Way. All right, so I'd like to start Third Way Alliance. Excuse me, Dr. The Third Way Alliance.
It's the era of alliances.
All right, I'd like to start, at the heart of the matter, and I'd like to start with you, Peter. This administration was the one that was sort of tasked with the challenge of implementing quite a number of issues in that constitution. How do you think, that process has gone so far?
Yvonne, allow me to begin by saying that Agenda 4 has been implemented by more than one administration. Mm-hmm. And so this administration is a follow-through of the work that began from 2008 moving forward. Mm-hmm. But certainly this administration has had the very interesting task, I must say, to be the ones who are implementing the reforms and the agenda envisaged on the Agenda 4 with a new constitution after the elections of 2013.
Right.
And so it has been an interesting journey. I must say that we have covered some ground, perhaps not as much as we think we should have by now, but certainly there are encouraging signs in terms of some of the things we've been able to achieve, and we'll be able to articulate, I think, a bit more.
Could you be, a little more specific? Just give us a few examples. Yeah.
If you look at Agenda 4, if I take land as one of the very sticky issues, mm-hmm. Tenure, security of tenure was one of the big issues that has been a problem in this country. This administration set out to say we are going to issue titles, for example. And we had a target of 3 million titles by 2017. I'm happy to say we are already now beyond as far as 2-point-something million as we speak, and we shall actually be able to overshoot our target by 2017. We began to talk about reforms in the land sector. For example, how do we deal with administration of land matters, our registries? As we speak now, we have a new National Bulk Titling Center. It is fully ready to deal with automated and digitized titling. We now have been able to digitize 13 of the under 30 registries in this country, and I think in the next 9 months or so we should be able to digitize every single registry in the Republic.
Okay, very
and
quickly.
And that is a big step, for example, in the land sector, among other things.
All right. I was going to ask about the challenges, but you can chip in.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's yes, this administration can claim to have implemented so much, and I'm happy that he's mentioning the issue of land. But to be frank with you, I think this administration has been so disappointing in the handling of land matters. First of all, we know that they have really undermined the National Land Commission. On the issue of issuance of title that my colleague talks about, this is not even a function of the executive. In fact, if you look at Article 67 that creates the National Land Commission, what the executive has done since they took over is to actually frustrate matters land, especially the workings, the independence of the National Land Commission. It's one of the transgressions I've seen of this administration. As a matter of fact, I tend to conclude that if there is number one enemy of the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, is actually this administration. Why? Probably because, one, you have a duo that never even believed in this Constitution in the first place, that Kenyans actually gave the opportunity to lead this country. I think for me that's mistake number one that Kenyans actually made. So on questions of matters of land, this is already individuals, either from their family pedigree, political pedigree, whose names actually decorate any matters to do with land, either land grabbing, land ownership, whatever the case may be. So I do not think, and of course their conduct over time has demonstrated that they are not really able to handle those matters land. And that's why they're interfering with the National Land Commission.
Okay,
allow me to interject there, please, if I may.
Please.
Ekuru is talking about that this administration has frustrated the National Land Commission. An interesting point. It is interesting that the highest court in this land has ruled on the subject matter of whose responsibility it is to issue and deal with titles. And it has correctly said it is the Ministry of Lands. Now, Ekuru obviously wants to subscribe to a law not in the Republic of Kenya. This is the law, that is the Supreme Court of the Republic ruled on the constitutional question. It was actually a matter, an advisory opinion sought on the Constitution, brought before the Supreme Court, and it's already ruled.
Okay, all right.
I hope we'll get time to talk about the Supreme Court.
All right.
So that we know whether even the decision the Supreme Court makes is one that is actually constitutional or not.
Okay.
So we can talk about this.
All right, let's have Daisy, and I think she's feeling a little left out in the cold.
Yeah,
Where do you think, you know, how far we've come with Agenda 4? Peter rightly puts it that, you know, the previous Grand Coalition administration and this one both playing a role in this. How would you assess that?
I think that the current administration has not successfully transitioned this country to the place that we ought to be. And I think that is primarily because of the kind of politics that is played in this country, and that the leadership of this country has actually failed in giving leadership to the constitutional process and the transitional process envisioned within the Constitution. Instead, we find that all means have been employed to actually consolidate power and play the kind of politics that actually brought us to the place where we were when we faced the, you know, where that brought us to the agenda 4 items. I mean, the issues that brought us to the Agenda 4 table. And I think that that is something that we must talk about, because the kind of leadership that has been displayed. I mean, I know that Peter talks about the strides that have been made in terms of the legislation and all, but we have seen, as Ekuru says, clear frustration.
Okay, could you speak to some of those clear frustrations? And I'd like to preempt the one that I know you're specifically passionate about, which is the 2/3 gender rule.
Yes, of course, the 2/3 gender rule. You know, I think one of the things that we need to understand is that the Constitution envisions a country. When we look at the preamble of the Constitution, it talks about recognizing that Kenyans want a more equitable society, one that is based on democracy, sharing, equity, and the rule of law. And of course, the rule of law implies that we're not working with the will of a person. This person subscribes to the rule of law as enshrined within the Constitution. What we saw is, when Jubilee actually came into office, because Jubilee are the first administration elected under the new Constitution, when they came into office, there were some very positive moves that they made, showing that they actually intended to honor the basic principles within the Constitution. And I think that the president made sure that every appointment that he made enshrined the 2/3 principle. He made sure that he did this. But we find that with the passage of time and the politics and trying to consolidate that power, he has continually moved away from the basic constitutional principles, particularly on the 2/3. And when you look at the current cabinet as it is constituted, it does not meet the 2/3 principle.
Peter?
And you know, I mean, we raised this issue. We wrote to Parliament about the list before they even vetted the nominees, and of course it was ignored. We've taken the matter to court, and we are hoping that the courts will actually rule in this matter.
Okay, Peter, that's an interesting one. The president has a cabinet that is not constituted according to the 2/3 gender rule.
The question one would ask is the cabinet fully constituted?
That is irrelevant.
What is he waiting for?
As currently constituted.
In the sense I'm saying is that indeed Daisy raises a good point. However, the president, being conscious of that point, is still organizing his government as we speak now. As a matter of fact.
Okay, let me say this.
So, if we hit the ceiling and say, look, this is it, there's no room for anything more, and we are not subscribed to that rule, then maybe
so when
can say...
can we expect that, Peter?
Can I say this? Can I say this?
The fact is, we are not, he's not at the top. And that's the truth. And I think Daisy will agree with me.
No, I will not agree with you. And let me tell you why. Because the Constitution envisions that we shall have a cabinet of not less than 14 and up to 22.
Yeah.
Okay? Right now, we have a cabinet of 20. Okay? Now, the cabinet, as enshrined in the Constitution, and I will read for you just to be sure,
Yes,
to be clear. The cabinet consists of the president, the deputy president, attorney general, and not fewer than 14 and not more than 22 cabinet secretaries. So, when you put together the number that is right now, we have 20 cabinet secretaries, plus the president, the deputy president, and the AG. We have a cabinet of 23. At a minimum, we need to have 8 women. Even if the president was to expand the cabinet to the full number of 22 and make them all women, it would still be unconstitutional. You would not have the numbers.
Because the president and the deputy president.
Because the deputy president, the president, and the AG are all men, and they make up the cabinet. So it's a cabinet in its totality. So when you look at the numbers, it doesn't meet muster. So even if he were to expand the cabinet by those extra 2 numbers, it would still be unconstitutional.
Peter, would you like
and
to
for
respond?
me, you cannot tell me that the president has not fully constituted cabinet, because even in its half constitution, you know, because before we had how many cabinet secretaries? 20, I think. 20.
Less.
Okay.
18, I think.
But he made sure that he abode by that principle. So even now, because you know, we know that the cabinet was constituted with the ethnic communities that are being targeted for 2017. So in essence, what the president has done by his appointment is to actually show that the women's constituency is not a valuable constituency politically for him. And so it is expendable. It's an expendable constituency. Not only that, no, I also want to remind him about the Jubilee Administration Manifesto. Page 30 of Jubilee's manifesto, under the Usawa pillar, the president makes a promise and a commitment to the women of Kenya, and actually states that women are tired of empty promises, and as Jubilee, they will ensure that they meet this threshold.
I would like
all
Peter
appointments, including
Daisy?
the mechanism to implement the 2/3.
And I would like to come.
Daisy, let's have Peter respond to that.
She raises very good points. And one thing is this, perhaps it's expected that I will completely refuse or refute everything she has said.